Second part, questions you should ask if you're a seller. So before listing your property, some questions that you should be asking are, what are the different types of buyers and how can that affect me? And what I mean by this is not like, any of the discrimination things that we have to avoid, but what are the different type of buying lending types that I might come across and how can that affect my sale? So here we have typically three different types of loan types, and there are a lot more, but these are the big major ones that we see in most deals. One is conventional. A conventional buyer typically will have a larger down payment, maybe a little bit higher of a credit score, and so a little bit more stable financial situation. With a conventional loan, there are less red tape to qualify and get approval and get funding for that property. We have also FHA and VA buyers. Now, FHA are people who maybe don't have as good of a credit score or as much of a down payment. They also may be coupling that FHA loan with some down payment assistance programs to help them come up with the down payment, which is great. However, with FHA loans, then you may see more opportunities where a buyer may ask for some seller concessions, helping cover some of those closing costs. Because if they're asking for assistance with the down payment, then they may also need assistance with closing costs. And so it can be common for the buyers to ask the sellers to help with that. And that could be anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 or more. With a VA, they have no down payment, so those types of buyers may also be requesting with seller concessions for closing costs assistance. But in addition to these, so VA and FHA also have what's called an appraisal inspection. So every time you're borrowing money to purchase a property, the lender will require an appraisal. They want to make sure that if they're lending you money to buy that house, that the house is worth at least that much or more, in value, because they don't want to lose out. The risk would be too high. But the VA and the FHA adds on what's called an appraisal inspection because they also want to make sure that that property is move-in ready, livable, that it meets basic HUD standards, and so housing standards. And so they will send their appraiser to do an added inspection to make sure that there's things like no broken or cracked windows, no chipping paint, no broken tiles, no ripped up carpet. And so a lot of times if properties are in less than optimal condition or they have some repairs that are needed and the sellers are not wanting to make those repairs, then if they accept an offer from a VA or FHA buyer and the appraisal inspector identifies things that need to be done, they will say, yes, we can move forward with the purchase of this property based on this condition. Meaning, if you fix that window, if you paint that, scrape and paint and repaint that wall, if you repair this XYZ. And so they will put conditions for which the seller may be responsible to do before the funding can happen. So before the close and the purchase can happen. And so that's the number one question that sellers should be asking are what are the differences in buyer types and how can it affect me and my sale, if at all? And it may not, but you should know if it will. So if you have any more questions on what sellers should be aware of, what they should be asking before they list, give me a call. I'm happy to have a talk.